Hello. Welcome to Moment of Clarity. Thank you for joining me on one of the most suppressed shows on the interwebs. I really appreciate it. The few of you out there that are actually allowed to see this anymore. But I wanted to talk about this Supreme Court nominee, and specifically, I'm not going to get into that much about her specifically, both because I haven't studied her. I mean, I assume anybody that Trump would put up is a monster, but I haven't studied her background or anything. But there's a lot I can tell you that I don't need to study in order to tell you about this, because it has to do with how they would approve, how Congress, how our government would approve, what they would look to approve or judge or question any Supreme Court nominee that gets put up there. Now, I've talked before about how the difference between the two sides, our two captured corporate parties, are not that different, right? Obama put forward Merrick Garland, who did not get on the court because Republicans blocked it, and Trump got through Brett Kavanaugh. And the fact is the two of those were on the bench together on the federal appeals court, I think, for many years. And while they were on the bench together, the two of them voted together 91% of the time, which means Obama's pick for the Supreme Court and Trump's pick for the Supreme Court were 91% the same. So that tells you a little bit how these picks for the Supreme Court are not as different as people want to believe they are. But here's the larger point I want to get to is I've only glanced at it. I haven't watched much of it because it makes me sick to look at this garbage. But I did read a little bit on the questions that were being asked of her and what she's saying. Amy Coney Barrett is her name. And they are asking her, about the specifics of her religion or the specifics of where she stands on the Affordable Care Act. Now, that's getting into a little nitty-gritty of the law that could affect a lot of people. I'm not denying that, whether someone gets health care or not, it doesn't affect a lot of people. It absolutely does. But think about what they're not asking her, and they would never ask her because of the culture and the system we live in. No one in that Congress is going to ask her whether she is okay with or fine with the fact that our government kills hundreds of thousands of innocent civilians every single year. On a good year, that's when we're behaving ourselves. We kill hundreds of thousands of innocent civilians, many of them with drone bombs, but many of them with economic war. The estimates are that 100,000 people have died in Venezuela over the past 3 to 4 years from U.S. sanctions alone. The same is being done in Syria with the sanctions along with bombs. And they would never ask her that, right? That wouldn't be a question because it is assumed in our system that if you are in that spot, if you're in Congress, for the most part, with maybe, a couple of exceptions, or if you are gotten to the point that you've been nominated to the Supreme Court, you already agree that that is awesome, that that is fine, that there is nothing wrong with our endless wars in general. Now, the Supreme Court might, if it were to come in front of the Supreme Court, might say something about Congress should be approving, this war budget, or, that could come in front of the Supreme Court. But it is assumed, and it is basically known, that they don't really have a big problem with the way the United States behaves, that the endless death and destruction that we manifest around the world in order to protect our empire, that is not generally a problem. It's amongst these people, right? Because they wouldn't be in that position. You wouldn't be nominated for the Supreme Court if you had a real issue. And I mean a real issue, not like I don't know, but like a furious, this is fucking disgusting. What the fuck is the matter with you psychopaths? If you had that kind of issue, like I do, I think I'm not going to be nominated to the Supreme Court anytime soon. But if you had that kind of issue with what's going on in U.S. foreign policy, U.S. The actions we take around the world, then you wouldn't get to that point. You wouldn't be in that Congress. Again, a couple of exceptions in Congress, but not many. And you definitely wouldn't be nominated for the Supreme Court. It it's kind of just accepted, and there's many other things that are kind of just accepted, like the brutality and death and destruction that is manifested by unfettered capitalism around the world. They're not going to ask her whether she's okay with that, whether she has any kind of problem with that, because that is assumed that she is just A-okay, just fucking high-fiving, yeah, love capitalism, totally fine with the fact that people are dying around the world that don't need to be dying, that the wealth is by definition extracted to a tiny number of people. Now it's 7 or 8 individuals have the same amount of wealth as the bottom 50% of the world, of the fucking world. 8 men have the same wealth as, and it is men, have the same wealth as the bottom 50% of the world, which is what? 3.5 billion people, something like that, 3.8 billion. I don't know what it is. But, and so that is assumed that you're fine with that. If you are a Supreme Court nominee, not just Trump's nominee, but any nominee, you are totally fine with that endless death and destruction and the extraction of the wealth to a tiny number of individuals. That is all cool with you. So basically, if you're getting to this point that you're up for the Supreme Court nomination or you're up for one of these big positions, then you've already signed off on this kind of immense and powerful and gigantic death and destruction. It'd be kind of like if it was a society, if we lived in a society where everyone was cannibals. It was just assumed that you were cannibal. People would just walk down the street, chop off someone's arm, and they'd be like, hey, that's my arm. And they just start munching on it. And that was culturally just considered fine. It was just considered normal. That the nominee to the head of their courts would not be asked, where do you stand on cannibalism? Because it was already assumed that that's just great. It's fine. They would never be questioned as to whether do you think it's okay to chop someone's arm off and just start eating it right there in front of them? That wouldn't be asked of them because it would be a culture where that's already accepted, already cool. And it's very similar with us, with the American empire, with our system, our socioeconomic system, in that. Now, granted, there are some people who have problems. Let's assume in the cannibal society, there's a few people, 5% are like, I don't think we should be eating each other. 5% are kind of opposed to it. It's kind of similar with America, the American empire. Most people either don't understand it or are fine with it, fine with what goes on overseas, at least fine enough that they're not raising a stink. They might in private company sit around and be like, should we be doing this? I don't know. But they're fine enough with it that they're not really getting angry, not really standing up, not really creating a melee, not really creating a razzmatazz or shenanigans or various other words. So it's similar to what I was saying about the cannibal society. It's like this person is up in front of Congress and they're not going to ask her about the largest amount of death and destruction that's done internationally in our name, but also in our own country, such as the fact that, 2,000 areas in the United States now have lead poisoning in their water. And that is done because of the immense amount of wealth that's being sucked out of your average citizens and your average cities and given to a small number of people, and the water's being privatized and bought up. And none of that's going to be asked of her. Because it's assumed you're fine with that. That's American society. You're cool with it. Don't have a problem with it. And so to me, this is like watching this questioning or even, taking in just a few minutes of it. It's like a bunch of sociopaths, maybe psychopaths, but let's just say sociopaths, asking another sociopath, where do you stand morally? Where do you stand ethically? And there's an unwritten code there that's like, well, we're all sociopaths. So let's just not even address that. let's ask you where you stand on the fine point of the law of this. Is it a states' right issue for the Affordable Care Act, or is it a federal government issue? We'll ask you where you stand on this tiny little fraction of the law. We're not going to question your general kind of moral belief about the American empire, because we're in agreement on that. We're in agreement that it is totally acceptable for us to kill and destroy and maim and disrupt and just cause chaos around the globe with any government that even minutely doesn't just bend over and accept whatever stipulations we put on them, whether it's don't be socialist or give us your oil or give us your minerals or whatever the fuck, join our central banking system, allow our pipelines, whatever it is, we will destroy their society if they don't give in to that stuff. And it is known and assumed that this nominee, as with all nominees, is fine with that, has no problem with that, because she would not be in that position as a nominee to the Supreme Court of the United States if she didn't already clearly sign off on all of that. And it's to such a point that it won't even be asked of her. Like if one person in Congress were to say to her, do you find it morally reprehensible that we've killed hundreds of thousands with our economic sanctions around the world? And she'd say, oh, well, I that's not a law question in terms of American law. She'd dodge it or something. But if that person asked that question, let's say there's that one stray congressperson. Sometimes there is. I'm not saying they would ask this, but I'm saying sometimes you have a stray congressperson like Bernie Sanders or Ron Paul or something that asks something that's not of the norm. Let's say someone did ask that. They'd probably be putting their political career in jeopardy. They'd probably be putting their campaign contributions in jeopardy. And so it's not even asked. It's not even questioned. It's just assumed that, of course, this person's fine with that. Instead, they focus on little legal questions about, Roe v. Wade or your religion. Would you let your religion get involved in the law? And some of those questions matter, but they're not hitting on the biggest things, which is we live in a dastardly, villainous, fucking crushing empire that's teetering on collapse because of the level of inequality that we have within our own country. And that it will not be discussed, will not be mentioned. So really, I don't need to turn on the hearing and watch every excruciating minute to know what a sham it's going to be and how laughable it'll be. I saw 30 seconds, and it was one of the Republican Congress people who, basically they're trying to defend her. So they're not actually asking her any questions. Generally, they're just ranting and raving against the Democrats because that's their job. And by the way, I think I've mentioned before that the Democrats could stop this nomination if they really wanted to. If they actually had any deep moral and ethical issues with this nominee, they could stop her. All they'd have to do is bring actual genuine impeachment charges against Donald Trump in the House of Representatives, which they control, and impeachment trumps, pun intended, all other business. So therefore, the impeachment would go forward first, and you wouldn't be able to approve or not approve the Supreme Court nominee. And so actually, they could stop the Supreme Court nomination, at least for the time being, but they're not going to. And by real charges, I mean bring war crimes charges against Donald Trump, bring emoluments clause, enriching himself with the presidency, whatever. There's a variety of real things they could get him for, but they would stop the nomination of this Supreme Court justice, but they have no interest in that. A, because they have no moral core. B, because they agree with, like this whole video has been about, 95% of what this woman stands for. They know she's going to defend the empire in her judicial judgments, if it ever comes to that. They know she's going to defend unfettered capitalist rule. They know she's going to defend the corporate state in general. Occasionally, there'll be some, I don't mean her personally, but I mean the Supreme Court will occasionally do things to basically allow the corporate state to continue running without quite crushing so many people that we have all-out revolution. That's what the Affordable Care Act is. It is trying to give enough to people, enough of a justifiable and feasible existence to people that there isn't some sort of all-out revolution across the country. And so the Supreme Court will sometimes step in to do a little thing here or there to actually moderately progressive in order to basically calm or a little release valve for the people to so that this exploitation can continue without too much anger. And the largely unfettered exploitation of 90% of the American public as we slave away, most of us in jobs we hate, most of us in jobs we don't want to be in our wage slavery, that can all continue. That's the Supreme Court's job, to defend that system. And so they know she's going to do that, because she wouldn't be a nominee for Supreme Court justice if she wasn't going to do that. So those aren't their questions. That's not what concerns them. What concerns them is little policy things here or there that they can tinker with and act like they have some sort of, grand moral stance against, when in fact they're not asking the deeper questions, the core questions of our society, because they can't and they won't, because you are basically a sociopath if you get into Congress. Again, there's a couple of exceptions, but in general, you kind of have to be one to get there, because you've got to sell your soul for gigantic campaign contributions. And you generally have to have all these caveats to what you might believe in order to get certain votes, like, oh, well, this district wants this and this district wants this. And I need to win both of them. So I'll pretend I'm saying this and I'll do this, or I'll pretend I stand for this and I can't vote for it once I get into office, because let's face it, Big Pharma owns my vote on that. So I won't actually vote for it, but I'll tell them I stand for this. So basically, in order to get to that position, and the U.S. is more, this happens to a greater or lesser extent in most governments, many of them. But the U.S. is kind of farther along on this capturing of the U.S. government. And something else real quick before I wrap up, something else they won't ask her is kind of the basis of the U.S. criminal justice system. I mean, the basis of our criminal justice system, it largely it defends the kind of white supremacist class system. In so many ways. I mean, that's what the drug war is, right? So when these judges sit behind their big benches with their high chairs, they get to have high chairs. Those are the two times you get to have high chairs, when you're a baby or when you're a judge. So they sit behind the big bench with their big high chair. And I don't know if they wear diapers, but they probably should. I mean, some of them are old enough that they really should be wearing diapers, especially on the Supreme Court. That tends to have a lot of, diaper age people on it. But anyway, they sit up there in their high chair, in their diapers, and They rule as to whether someone has broken the law on, say, a drug charge. Now, they generally don't decide whether that drug charge is right, whether that law is right or wrong. And I bet a lot of them would argue, well, that's not my job. My job is not to argue whether the law is right or wrong. And that's lovely to say that. But if you live in a system where the laws have been written almost exclusively, with a few exceptions, almost exclusively by fucking rich white men, really almost exclusively, then what do you think those laws are going to favor? They are going to favor rich white men again and again. And so, and the biggest thing is rich, obviously, right? It would be too obvious nowadays if there were laws that explicitly favored men, but classism is kind of still allowable, and it is still fully entrenched in our laws. And so the drug laws, as everybody knows, Joe Biden helped create the drug laws that have over doubled our prison population, created the largest prison state in the entire world. And those laws, because the drug war from the start under Nixon was designed to be racist. It was designed to imprison far more black people than white people. Generally, if a white person gets caught with a joint, and I realize marijuana has been legalized in some places, but white person gets caught with a joint or something, the cop lets him off, right? It's who's going to know? Two people on a sidewalk, cop catches a guy with a joint. Well, don't do it again. And they let the white guy off. The black guy, not so much. He gets arrested and put in jail. So these are racist laws to begin with. And then, of course, there were racist dynamics about the actual amount of time in jail. You serve 10 years for a little bit of crack, and you serve 6 months for a little bit of cocaine, because cocaine was traditionally a white drug, crack traditionally a black drug. So therefore, you could lock up for much longer black people. And they had racist charges like that. Now, you put those in front of a judge, and the judge would say, well, it's not my job to morally decide whether this drug or that drug is, whether this law is right. I just decide whether the law has been broken. So their job is to enforce the already racist, classist, legal criminal justice system, right? I mean, it's not, you kind of got to be an idiot if you think our entire criminal justice system that has been built up over hundreds of years, mainly created and written by rich white men, you'd have to be kind of crazy or incredibly naive not to think that a lot of those laws favor rich white people. You'd have to really not want to look into it, not want to see how the sausage is made to believe that these laws are the entire criminal justice system. Isn't just filled with the rot of rich people writing these laws, oligarchs writing these laws. But of course, the judges, they're part of the oligarchy in a certain sense, if not the oligarchy, at least the upper class. And they're say their job is to just decide whether the law was broken and whether the proceedings are being followed in court. And their job is not to say whether this law is fucking racist or whether this law is fucking wrong. So, yet again, you see how fucked this system is, and how, in a lot of ways, whether you love Amy Coney Barrett or whatever her name is, if I got it wrong, or you hate her, you're not going to get the deeper questions answered in this hearing or ever with the Supreme Court. And you're only going to see, if it were a Democrat right now in the presidential office picking this nominee, they would have a 90% similarity to Amy Coney Barrett. I'm not saying there are differences, and I'm not saying if the Affordable Care Act gets thrown out that certain people wouldn't lose health care. They would, because we have one of the most fucking pathetic healthcare systems in the world. It's pathetic under the Affordable Care Act. It was slightly more pathetic under our previous system, which was fucking no system, insurance companies. But yeah, I hope I've made you think of some things, think about some things here. And I hope that is cleared up what you should be seeing in these hearings. And you will not hear any of this, just about anything I just said. None of it will be on your mainstream media, because again, that's not their job. Their job is to enforce the system. Their job is to, now it's to debate. There is debate on your mainstream media, but their job is to debate in a narrow window, the Overton window. Their job is to debate in a narrow window that makes you think that's the entire debate, and you never think about all the points I just laid out there. They don't want you thinking about those, because then it all falls apart for them, doesn't it? I hope you guys enjoy these videos. If you do, please click subscribe, click the bell icon, click a thumbs up, leave a comment, share it. Please share it with people, even though it's suppressed. Few people see it each week. And I do these almost every single day, except sometimes. And you can get them all at leecamp.com. So because I'm suppressed, it's kind of going to be up to you. Do you want to find these videos? Do you want to see them? If so, go to leecamp.com almost every day. Check on what's new, because you will find something new there almost every single day. I'm not saying it's the most high-tech site. I'm not saying it's some kind of killer app. It's just a regular old website, but it's got my videos and it's got my stuff there every day. So thanks for supporting it, and check out leecamp.com and keep fighting. Yeah. And I will see you tomorrow.